Hello, my name is Mike Moret, and today we are going to be talking about how Jesus is currently portrayed in our modern day society, particularly in our media. I'm going to be examining and discussing with you Jesus Christ and his description in the way that he was portrayed and described in the movie just released last year, incredible, commendable film with 10 series released on the History Channel called The Bible, directed by Mark Burnett and Roma Downey in 2013. It's an incredible film that the two directors decided to create a story for people who had not exactly read the Bible, but were interested in it and wanted to get an easy way of picking up on the story of the Old and New Testament. This does cover a whole lot about Jesus, as the New Testament does as well. And we are going to be discussing and analyzing the differences of how Jesus is portrayed in the Bible versus how he is portrayed in this film series that was top of the line on History Channel last year with nationwide, actually worldwide viewers. First, we're going to be talking about how the Bible physically describes Jesus Christ. Actually, funny enough, it does not say very much for his physical descriptions. What little is said, though, is in Isaiah 53:2 and Revelations 1:13 through 18. Isaiah 53:2 says this: "He grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem." Now, Revelations 1:13 to 18 takes a little bit of a different take on Jesus and describing him at a different time in his life, but it also describes him as this, quoting, saying, "And among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet, and with a golden sash around his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, and white as snow, as his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze growing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp, double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, 'Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last.'" So, now, we're going to take a little bit of a look into a clip, into this movie, the Bible, so the movie's called, and see if there is a drastic difference or not from what I just described, describing Jesus as a somewhat unattractive, one who no one wanted to look at, remember that as you watch this, or if he is portrayed any different for the audience of who the directors made. Let's take a look and see. Right here. And really pay attention to the beginning of this clip.
Prepare the way for the... Whoa. What are we going to do? Change the world.
Make sure you pay attention to that.
He's here! Who? Jesus! He's back!
Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. What are you saying? That you are the Messiah, the chosen one, sent by God? It has begun.
Take note of how the people look to you.
It will be filled. You me. 5,000 came to see him. 5,000. King comes to me riding on a donkey. There is something unusual about him. There is nothing unusual about him apart from his ability to cause havoc. The disturbances that took place today are repeated.
I'm going to stop this for just a second. One big part is coming.
Forgive them. They know not what they do.
There's the scene of the tomb.
Mary, I am here.
I saw him.
Mary, maybe it was someone else.
Now, notice how Jesus looks in this film right here. Does it seem very different or the same from the description we were just reading in the Bible? Let's see. The Bible, in what we were saying in Isaiah 53, said that he had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. and nothing in his appearance that we could desire of him. However, this guy who plays Jesus, Mr. Diogo Morgulho, he is the actor. He's pretty much a Brad Pitt. He is somewhat attractive, and he has a very clear accent, and he is also, important to note, he is Caucasian. And that is actually an interesting fact, because the director of this movie chose people more like the audience he was looking for, Americans, versus choosing Middle Easterns to play the role, because Middle Easterns have much darker color tone, skin tones, which is what we would expect of Jesus as well. And coming back to our first actual images we have of Jesus, now going into that, maybe what started what we thought he looked like besides the brief descriptions we discussed, they actually were not established until the 3rd or 4th century after Jesus' death. They were discovered in the catacombs of Rome under one of the cathedrals in the city, and it created, obviously, the person as a painting. And the person who created this painting made Jesus look Caucasian and have long brown hair, not silver, and not unattractive. And he was a very attractive man. So that researchers said in these paintings that we've had. That is one of the originations of where we start looking at Jesus today. However, people see Jesus all around the world differently, and they identify it to their culture, just like here with African American Jesus. This is very similar as seeing Jesus in your own way and identifying him with your culture so he's familiar, just like the person in Rome who painted that picture of Jesus and left it in the catacombs, which were the hallways under the churches, kind of like caves where they left artifacts. The African American culture identifies with Jesus as being black, because he is similar to them and he is with them, and that's how they see their people. And then Chinese see Jesus as a Chinese person. So people around the world change their view and the way that he is portrayed in their culture to further accommodate to their culture and feel more comfortable with him and connect more with his race. So he's not foreign. Now, coming into today, speaking of connecting more and creating a new image, the modern day Jesus America pictures a guy, in almost everywhere you look, you will see this. There is a Jesus with blue eyes, very, very nice facial structure, almost like feminine looking, and some long brown hair, a beard, and Caucasian, as you can see here, and often wearing a crown of thorns if in certain pictures, which Jesus did wear on the day of his crucifixion. So they do this. This pictures Jesus as like a kind of happy, easygoing guy who's just, hey, I saved you and I love you and it's okay, you can do whatever. And that is part of Jesus in some ways, the loving way, but that is not all he is. And our modern day Jesus is way different than the way he was pictured in the Bible. And Mark Burnett and Roma Downey painted this biblical story around the way that our society is right now and the way we see religion and Jesus. They kept it very politically correct. They used very friendly wording. They did not touch on the hot subjects of homosexuality or things that kind of tend to be avoided in some conversations. And they really made sure that Jesus came across as a very positive figure. They did not include the side of Jesus that went around rebuking people for their sins and trying to make them live better lives. And he did it out of love, of course. But they did not include the side of Jesus that went casting out, that went correcting people and the negative prophets. They mainly kept Jesus in a very positive light, which goes along with this figure that we see right here. It was a very interesting way to analyze it and see that from the Bible. And in addition, it actually added a little bit more into the dialogue of what Jesus said. However, that being said, they did an excellent job of keeping the dialogue very similar to what is spoken in the Bible between Jesus and all of the people, the Gentiles and the Jews and everyone in Israel at that time. They did a fantastic job of keeping the story very closely done. But like I said, there are one or two things where they added in that people are quoting Jesus as saying now after the release of this movie that were not there. And I don't know if you remember when I told you to pay attention in the beginning, at the first second, somebody asked Jesus, "Lord, what are we going to do?" And Jesus says, change the world. I attached an Indiana Jones picture here for a significant reason, because the two directors of this movie made the, you can already tell by looking at the preview, they made it look almost like an action movie, more than a serious drama of, our life of Jesus Christ in the Bible. And it looked almost like the movie more like 300 with battles, which did happen, but they made it look extremely action-packed, and the series goes as well like that. And they almost made Jesus portrayed more like a superhero, or someone who's going out to change the world, so you could say, as Indiana Jones. And Jesus, yes, he did change the world, but he came as a part of a mission sent by, as a part of a mission. So that is much different than these superheroes who go in saying, I'm going to change the world. And it's interesting how our media is portraying Jesus now as just mainly a positive figure who's kind of a happy-go-lucky guy. But the truth is, as we dissect the Bible, we find there is much more to Jesus than what we see on TV. And that is something that this movie can show, as it shows generally a one-sided direction over the views of Jesus. Of course, there are moments where he is a lot more serious, but overall, this movie was heavily adapted to our culture, being very sensitive and politically correct towards religion, and keeping things very, how should I say, respectful and just positive in the most sense of the way that Jesus' history went. Thank you very much for your time, and I would love to speak with you if you have any questions or comments or concerns. Have a wonderful day.